Hello there. Here I am standing at the Deoksugung Palace, which was a center of resistance during the Imjin War, and therefore this is a fittingly symbolic site to study whether Hagen miniatures, Joseon Korean soldier miniatures, are worth buying, worth looking at, worth examining at all. Have you ever started a 1/72nd Joseon Dynasty Korean army? Righteous or otherwise? No, you probably have not. The Joseon Koreans are barely represented in all of tabletop wargaming, let alone in 1/72nd scale. And I know why. It's because their military is not popular in mainstream culture outside of Korea. Local Korean companies seem to not be interested in Joseon tabletop wargaming. So, it's up to us. However, Perry Miniatures did make Joseon Koreans in 28mm scale, and now, coinciding with the recent Zenith Miniatures Korean Kickstarter, there is more Korean-centric media in the Western consciousness. Yes, it was driven by K-pop, but that has piped more general interest in Korean movies and television, and English speakers can see the quality of Korean productions, such as the excellent Admiral Yi Sun-shin trilogy or the recent Goryeo-Khitan War, which I'm watching now. The conception of media is very important for the proliferation in tabletop gaming, I feel. Just as The Last Samurai expanded mainstream interest in the samurai, you need a spectacle to draw the people's interest. Apparently, Gladiator by Ridley Scott made a lot of people interested in Roman history. I only hope that there is a great flowering of interest in Joseon Korean armies, and when there is, this video will stand as a testament to being one of the first, a brave pioneer in Joseon tabletop wargaming. Why does that matter? Well, it doesn't, but, it's good to have brownie points for being one of the first, Like, I was here first before it was cool. As it stands, the offerings for 1/72nd Korean miniatures is not great. The most accessible miniatures are by Redbox, and that's it. No one else, no other mainstream company makes 1/72nd Koreans. 3D printing, however, has a range by Small Miniatures, which is not great. Why, you ask? Just look at these models. The company clearly reused assets from its samurai range. That says everything I need to say about the quality and the historical accuracy of their miniatures. However, in the back, untouched areas of the internet exists a range of Korean miniatures that few know about. Well, not range, one unit. What is this unit? Well, it's in the title. But it is formed of rare materials now, antiquated in miniature making. These are metal miniatures. Metal miniatures were common in my childhood, but as the cost of metal rose, Games Workshop phased them out, and so did many companies, and now we are in the 3D printing age. These miniatures are a hallmark of a different time, an older time. Back then, gaming was uncool, and food was affordable. Games Workshop miniatures were still expensive, but only very expensive, not absurdly so. Time changes all things. The Korean Heavy Infantry that I will review today are produced by Blackwatch Miniatures. Blackwatch Miniatures originated with Hagen Miniatures. Their stated purpose was to offer only figures sculpted by Massimo Costa. However, Hagen Miniatures remains, offering figures from different sculptors. I myself purchased the Korean Heavy Infantry under the Hagen Miniatures name before it moved to Blackwatch. These miniatures were originally designed for the Japanese invasions of Korea, otherwise known as the Imjin War, which would mean these Koreans represent the military of the Joseon Dynasty. In this installment of my Imjin War Joseon Korean series, I will cover how the models relate to the history of the Joseon military to contextualize them. Then I will examine the sculpts themselves, and finally I will show painted examples of these models. So regarding the historical context of these models, what troops could they represent? Based on their armor, they most likely represent Gapsa of the Central Guard or the Pengbeisu of the Right Guard of the 5 Wei central armies of the Joseon dynasty. This high-quality armor was beyond the means of most archers, Chongtong gunners, and conscripted infantry of the Jiangbiang provincial armies. The cost of Joseon armor, listed in order of least to most expensive, was paper or cotton, then chainmail, then brigadine, then plate with chainmail was the same as lamella. While the prestige of Joseon armor for the early to mid-Joseon was in order of least to most prestigious, paper or cotton, then chainmail, then brigadine, or plate with chainmail, then lamella. There was no regulation of armors at this time, except for some units of the Royal Guards. Indeed, there was a fair range of types of armor worn by the Korean army. The military did not supply their soldiers with armor, but rather soldiers and officers were required to purchase their own armor or use a set they already owned. As one's economic status usually correlated with their position in the military, armor became an easy way to tell one's position. As such, there were no uniform armors. Troops could be armored within a diverse range, with certain tendencies or stereotypes, but exceptions existed. For example, Pengbeisu could wear brigadine as well as lamella or chainmail and could wield a rectangular shield or a rounder one. Almost every figure appears to be wearing brigadine armor in this set. However, there is one figure that appears to be wearing fish scale armor called a lean gap. A lean gap was made by attaching small pieces of metal to the surface of the armor like fish scales, and so was known as scale armor. This armor was essentially ceremonial, with low protective capacity, and was first made after the Imjin War. Every other figure is wearing Korean brigadine, named Dujeonggap. Dujeonggap was an outer layer of cotton canvas with a layer of iron plates lining its interior. Asian-style Dujeonggap is known as Mongolian or Northern Asian nomadic armor. These armor designs spread from the Mongolian invasions, taking root in China and Korea in the 13th century. Korean armor tendencies had hitherto been two-piece constructions, so the introduction of one-piece Mongolian brigadine was exotic to the later Goryeo dynasty. As such, the Mongol brigadine was adapted into the local style of two pieces in the early 15th century. However, the two-piece brigadine changed back to the one-piece in the mid-Joseon era of 16th to the 17th century to make it more convenient to wear and easier to repair when damaged by projectiles. However, one-piece brigadine existed in early Joseon just like two-piece existed in late Joseon. While the favored style changed, both styles coexisted. Under their armor, it is likely they are wearing hyopsu, which was a sleeved, short undercoat, the standard military costume of the mid-Joseon soldiers. Helmets from the Goryeo period resembled European kettle helms, with a protective brim that either circumferenced the entire helmet or merely extended over the brow. The popularity of the kettle helmet was associated with early Joseon, which gradually transitioned to the cone-shaped helmet by mid-Joseon because of Mongol influences, similar to helmets in the Ming dynasty. However, the kettle helmet was still being used until the middle of the 18th century and was consistently the most popular helmet used by Korean forces even during the Imjin War. The iron kettle war helmet with round visor was called the chomju. The iron helmet without the visor was called the wonju. The iron cone-shaped helmet was called the ganju. Let us now discuss weapons. There are several weapons available to the figures, including spears, swords, a trident, round shields, and an elongated hexagon shield. The spears are fine. The swords are fine. Two figures wield two swords, the technique of which was called sangjom, and is a feature of Joseon Korean bladecraft among a military that much prefers ranged combat. So I'm glad to see this. However, the trident does not work for the Imjin War period. Contrary to depictions in popular culture, the dangpa, or trident, was not used in the Imjin War time. It was imported from China during the Imjin War, alongside the introduction of the Zhejian strategy, but the use of it in the Joseon military was formalized after the war. Historically, there were round and long shields, and it is known that drawing a ghost on the shield was used to scare the enemy's horses. Long shields are usually depicted as differently shaped, but historical evidence shows that it is historically authentic. In the Baekje period, 1,000 years before. So yeah. Now, let us talk about the sculpts. The first thing I want to discuss is the material. Now, metal miniatures have certain properties. Some people like the weight of metal miniatures. However, metal is harder to convert because of the weight, and paint chips easily when handling because of the lower flexibility of the material. It costs more to manufacture metal minis, and the heavier weight increases shipping costs, plus they no longer win in the detail category. They used to hold detail better than plastic, but plastic has come a long way, and now we have 3D printing resin to hold equal, if not greater amounts of detail. Looking at the features of the figures, the Erline Gap armor is historically problematic, but it is so iconic of Joseon Korea, I can understand why it was included. The scales appear to be badly rendered without the circular shape of a scale, and almost appears to be lamellar. But Joseon lamellar did not have sleeves, but had shoulder pads instead, so this cannot be lamellar. Plus, his thighs are covered by the trademark brigandine that is combined in Erline Gap. The brigandine armor's rivets are far too large, which actually makes them easier to paint, but historically inaccurate. There should be more and smaller rivets. All of the brigandine sculpts are one-piece brigandines, which is fine for the period. We are lacking diversity in armors. It would have been nice to see lamellar, plate with mail, or chainmail being depicted, but we got the safest option of brigandine and fish scale only. The helmets are mostly the cone-shaped ganju, but there are 3 instances of kettle helmets. The chomju, which is nice. Historically, there should be a higher ratio of chomju, but this is still within the realms of historical possibility. The quality of the faces, in my opinion, are average or passable. For material that can hold a great amount of detail, the noses can seem a little blobby, and their mouths are nothing special. So they work, they're fine, but they do not amaze. Now, let us take a look at some painted examples of these figures. But first, I'm going to show you the bare metals of these models. Look at the ridges and bumps. Observe the folds of clothing, the stoic armor, the defiant poses. As you can see, the detail is not bad. They're not too blocky, and their features are discernible. I chose to paint the brigandine orange and blue. I chose orange after being inspired by a commander in the short film A Symbol of Enthusiasm, The Second Battle of Jinjuseong. I chose blue because it seemed like a standard color of Joseon brigandine, but in hindsight, I should have made it pale yellow, the color of Nankin, to reflect it being the natural color of cotton cloth, which was likely to be common, but blue is fine, and there is not enough evidence currently to definitively say what the color system for the armor was. Again, the minimal amount of rivets make painting easier, but that is not historically accurate. You can see the Blackwatch metal models work quite well alongside models by other companies. Their height is not abnormal, and their build fits with the other figures. The detail on the figures work. I personally would have preferred finer and smaller parts. Metal models have the capacity to hold smaller details, but the current level of detail is acceptable. Ultimately, it is nice to have more variety. Given how the average Joseon enjoyer has so few options, any of them are worth exploring, and this set provides decent heavy infantry models. These figures are very safe. They tick the box of the stereotype of Korean heavy infantry, but are essentially historically accurate. I did appreciate the dual-wielding swordsman in particular. The figures are dynamic and needed for Imjin War hobbyists. In summary, I think these models are worth looking into if you want metal Joseon soldiers or more variety in your units. Blackwatch and Hagen are to be commended for trying to make more niche and unconventional miniatures, and with such a solid result, I am happy with my purchase and hope to bring the Korean heavy infantry to the tabletop in the near future. Time to get painting. Okay, and there you have it. So we've now studied Hagen Miniatures, Joseon Korean miniatures, and it's great that they are exploring this very undervalued period of history. But I hope you got something out of it, and I hope maybe you get some miniatures, so maybe more manufacturers start to explore this space. All right, thanks.